Hey guys, it's Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I'm Pavel the Cat Zygmunt, and I am beardless, and I've got my co-host to tell me all about it.
You're beardless. Okay, give us the quick story here before we get into this. Why are you beardless?
Because my team lost in the playoffs. I'm like John Cooper. I feel like I should still be playing, but I'm not, and so I had to shave up because I gave up. Not like Tampa Bay Lightning. Just kidding. I had a little guy, and I did a lot of work at the hospital, so I have a new fan of the show, and two guys and half a little guy and hockey talk.
Hey, hang on, you said
overtime.
You did a lot of work at the hospital? Maybe it was someone else. Okay. Yeah, just like this show, you did no work. You just staying true.
I just sat around looking pretty, and then someone said, "Hey, do you know something?" And I said no, and they said, "Okay, we'll talk." I'm like, "All right."
Well, guys, I'm doing good, guys. Welcome to the show. This is season 3, episode 38. Great to be back this week. I was going to go it alone, but we delayed one night. Actually, we were ready to go last night, but we're back with you here for Thursday night. As we said, coming into the summer months is a little bit more random, but we're still back at you. Congratulations on the newborn baby to you and your family. So it's going to be 2.5 guys in hockey talk. It sounds like we'll have to bring him in. I mean, he probably already, knows more about hockey than you. So
I'm also going to say, because I know you're big into prospects, that I can give you all the inside information about his stats. Because he's probably going to be going with one of our other colleagues and friends who's on the show, Aaron Singleton, who's got a boy. They're probably going to go at the same time in the draft, 1 and 2. I'm not going to say who's going to go first because I don't want to be biased, but of course we know it's my little guy, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm guessing you homers are hoping that Edmonton pulls out the 1st and 2nd overall by that time.
I mean, I'm hoping it's the quarterback Nordiques by that point because we have a new team in the NHL, but who knows?
Well, everyone, if you can subscribe to us on YouTube, you can like, follow, and share with us on Facebook. Also, you can, we always encourage you to connect out the ASAP network. They do all stuff, sports, even wrestling, baby, if you like wrestling. So I'm stoked today. We got a lot of stuff to cover. We want to try and make this a shorter show because you got a baby to feed. Or, I mean, you got to watch your wife feed the baby.
I am the baby. I'm the one that needs feeding. I feel like I need sleep and feeding, so I need all the work. So seriously, you're going to do all the work today. I'm just going to watch because I'm learning on the go as how to do this hockey talk thing.
All right. Well, why don't we get into it? So let's start kick off some stuff here. Let's do it, man. Here we go.
We're going to get into the Stanley Cup Final.
Woo!
Game 4. The Colorado Avalanche have beaten in overtime the Tampa Bay Lightning 3-2. What an exhilarating game. Now, I got to watch with my little guy the game, and it was so fun. And it was hard to yell every time someone screamed or there was a weird call because I didn't want to wake him up. But I'm sure he'll get used to it soon. So, Evan, what are your initial thoughts of that game when you watched it?
Okay, let's start it right off the top because it was an overtime victory. A lot of people thought Tampa were going to pull this one out. It started looking like that early on. Okay, let's talk about the controversy. Some people call it a controversy with the overtime goal, that there was too many men on the ice for Colorado. Check me out on Twitter at Revenev. I've actually posted a picture. Now, everyone knows I've been saying that Tampa would win the Stanley Cup. I did give a caveat last week of if they're not going to win, why? And it's that guy behind me, Makar. I said if they cannot contain Makar, this can be easily a 5-game series for the Colorado Avalanche, and they have not contained Makar. Unfortunately, I think that my predictions to the three-peat, they're not going to be there. And I just want to make mention to 2 things. Number one, if they take this series on the next game, and they will be the lowest amount of losses with only 3, because the best teams in history had 4, unless you're dating back to when they didn't have to win as much. But they're going to have the best record. So Colorado could put themselves into the mantle of history with what they're coming in. Okay, but let's talk about that overtime win. Was it an overtime? What should have it actually been called? Because there were 6 men technically on the ice. My Twitter feed will show you, though, Tampa Bay had 7 men on the ice while they had 6. But someone brought something up. Now, you tell me what you're thinking here, Pavel. They brought, I've said it shouldn't really matter, and I think it was a well-earned victory. But if there's too many men, it doesn't matter who gets a penalty, it still wouldn't have counted on the goal. Your thoughts?
Yes, I hate agreeing with you, or maybe it's just the tiredness that I just can't argue with you at this moment, and I have to go along with the thing. First off, one of the things that you have to be mindful is that there's ebbs and flows to the game, as we've talked about, and sometimes it's not a perfect switch or change. And of course, it's subject to the call on the refs and the linesmen on the ice. They dictate the flow of the game. And of course, as you indicated, there were a few extra players for Tampa before then. Was it too many men? I don't think so. Because when I believe it was, I want to say it's either Landeskog or McKinnon, one of the two were getting off the ice. That's when Kadri had gotten on and was skating towards the net. Now, that being said, when I was watching, I didn't even think it was a goal. I thought Vasilevsky made a great save, and I was surprised that it had gone into the top center of the net, and nobody knew where it was, right? It took a moment for everyone to realize. I think there's been some very interesting calls, but again, it's a fast-paced game. You can only do so much. There's been some missed calls on both sides, whether in this series or previously. Yeah. Of course, it's not as blatant as the Brett Hull, and the Buffalo Sabres in 1995. Like, was it a goal? Was it not a goal? Calgary and Lightning in 2004. So there are far worse things to do it. Tampa Bay can't let Colorado score, and I think they've not been able to control Makar. The way he skates, I got to go out of limb, Evan, and say here right now, he is probably the second best player in the NHL. Better than Matthews, better than Draisaitl, better than McKinnon, better than a lot of guys, even Kucherov. Like, this guy, like close to McDavid, the way he skates, it's beautiful. It's like, and he's on any team, if he was a forward, he'd be putting up 100 points. Like, how can you know? Like, and you were right. If you don't stop Makar, what are you doing? So, good effort by the Avalanche. The one thing that Tampa Bay needs to work on, and I'm surprised that Vasilevsky has struggled. How do you control that power play? You have to stop. You have to have a good penalty kill. Yes. And that's where John Cooper and his coaching staff or defensive coaching staff have to make an adjustment. You can't let those in.
Yeah. Well, actually, I find it actually kind of interesting when you're just talking about with Makar being the second best and how he's moving that thing. They're not getting that from Hedman in Tampa Bay. Now, Hedman is good, but right now, the forechecking and the speed, which Colorado comes to them at, they're just not able to handle that right now. The reason that they're even been close, I think, in my opinion, is because of the fact that their experience paying off and them using their strategizing and stuff. I actually believe, I know some of you Tampa Bay fans are going to call me the homer on this. I actually think that Edmonton was more competitive in the overall series than actually Tampa has been, even though Tampa won a game. Edmonton was 1 point away in 3 of those games, right?
St. Louis won 2 games. So right now, if you're giving credit to anybody, St. Louis is the only one that's been able to push Colorado to some extent, but goaltending. Yeah, I know. I understand.
But the way that they were playing in that, I have some questionable calls, and I get what you're saying on the St. Louis front. I think St. Louis is a has-been. They're not going to be coming back. Sorry, Blues fans. I guess we're not picking you up tonight on our show.
Now we're close to the end of this series where Colorado can close that out at home, which is also a very big deal because winning a Stanley Cup is one thing. Winning at home is that's a big deal, especially the crowd. So I can imagine those tickets are going to be quite pricey. Who right now in your mind is worthy of the Conn Smythe and who is a secret candidate? And
okay.
I have
obviously Makar is going to be the Conn Smythe. I came into this tonight because I wanted to mention, I'm going to call it right now. Even if somehow Tampa could come back and win this, Makar is still going to be the Conn Smythe winner. I call it out right now.
I would agree with you, but I would say Nichushkin has a very good argument for winning it as well. You don't think so?
I mean, I've never saw that kind of a player with what he's produced. Be able, like, I just can't see how they could vote over someone like Makar. I
Oh, I
don't think.
agree.
Yeah, but you know what? He's gonna be able to cash in pretty soon. Let's just say that
So
because Nichushkin, which by the way in his draft year, I actually wanted the Oilers to pick him up. I was actually hoping for, but I mean, it looked like a bust in his first years in Dallas.
yeah, in
So, but
Dallas, he
so
struggled.
I really don't have any backdoor. I think it's Makar, Makar, and Makar.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you'll see this in throughout the playoffs that usually that they dictate the Conn Smythe is deserving of the four series, but there's such an emphasis placed on that final that they
Yeah,
really focus. And you've seen this in other series in the past, right? Whether it's
right.
Malkin or Crosby taking over, or Kane, or Duncan Keith having a great season one year, right? So I
Yeah,
mean, it happens
yeah.
at any point where even though it's a great series for the team and one player, there's someone that always stands out a little bit. Ryan O'Reilly. I thought Jordan Binnington was going to win it that year that they won the cup, but Ryan O'Reilly ended up winning it because of how dominant he was in the
Yeah.
faceoff circle and
Yeah.
how well he played in that series versus Boston. So it's definitely food for thought.
Well, and I think the thing in there, Ryan O'Reilly, he's a centerman. It's really hard for wingers to be able to get in there. So, okay, so we're excited. Next week, we're going to be able to talk about who actually was the winner. Regardless, this is going to be fabulous. But here's my thought: Colorado. Before we move on here, let's talk about the team Colorado. This is a one and done. This is a one and done. So Colorado, and I'm calling it now. Colorado's going to win it. If they don't win it at home, they're going to win it when they get back to Tampa for sure in a game 6. But I think they're going to take it in 5. But listen, guys, Josh Manson will hit the UFA market likely here.
Yeah.
Nazem Kadri is going to cash out.
Yeah.
I put it on my Twitter also. I think look out for Stevie Yzerman going after Kadri. Pay attention to that. And the dark horse there is Seattle. I could see him cashing in over at Seattle, especially if he wins the cup. Now, Valery Nichushkin, they're going to want to sign him. They want to get him back because you need that kind of player. And then they also need to sign Darcy Kemper. So you're not going to get all that money under contract. They've been able to fit it in. And they only got, one more year of McKinnon at the rate he's at.
Yes, that's 6.5, yeah.
So maybe they can be competitive. I think they'll be still the top 2 next year. They'll still be the favorite. But I look for Edmonton and Colorado to be in the finals again for the Western Conference next year. But I do not think Colorado's going to be able to be there.
Dare I say that we'll see Corey Perry in an Avalanche jersey next year?
Oh man. So okay, hey, so let's go. Let's talk a little bit about a few other little notes around the league and kind of what's all happening next week. By the way, we're going to dedicate our show to the prospects. So just so everyone knows, the UFA this year has been delayed. It's on July 13th. So unrestricted free agency. Normally it's July 1st. It's July 13th, and I believe I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think it's the 7th and 8th, I believe, is going to be the draft in Montreal. Am I correct?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So next week we're going to dedicate.
And they have the first round pick, which is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of talk out there. We're going to talk all around it. So if you have any thoughts, any ideas, things you think you'd like us to talk about around it, I'm going to release my Revs Top 15 for the prospects for the NHL draft. By the way, this is not my mock where they're going to go. I'm telling you, these are the top 15 players that will be throughout their career. So I'm not projecting them in 5. I'm projecting throughout their career for their placements. So I will share that next week. I want you guys to think about this, though. The road to the NHL for prospects, sometimes you think is always through like NCAA, or it's through this Canadian Hockey League or a European league like, even the VHL and stuff over in Europe. But think about this. Cale Makar came from the Alberta Junior Hockey League. He took a different route and then over to the NCAA and so forth to come in. So
there's a great video online. There's a great video online of Nathan McKinnon being interviewed that year that Cale Makar was picked, and I believe he went 4th. So he was passed off by 3 teams. And I think McKinnon said, who's this McCarr kid or McCare or whatever, right? And he didn't know who he was. And he's like, oh man, we're going with some, random people. And I believe that was the Nolan Patrick, Nico Hischier, Miro Heiskanen. Those, I think, three went before, so, he's kind of like, who's this guy? And I'm pretty sure he's changed his tune about having Cale McCarr on his team now. So, but just FYI, just a fun little video.
Interesting, eh? That's really cool. So, hey, let's go move over to Edmonton. Let's take care of this. Sometimes we leave them to the end because we don't want you guys to think we're a bunch of homers out of Edmonton. Let's talk because they're going to want to push for next year. Lots of talk surrounding, so I'm going to let you talk a little bit around some of the stuff going on. I just want to say again on my Twitter, you can follow me at @RevaNev. You can find all about hockey. By the way, you can follow at Color Avenue and just learn all about cats, though, if you want to, on Instagram from my co-host here, Pavel the Cat. And not because of his reflex as a goalie, like Felix the Cat, but because he loves playing with his cats.
We're going to say it a different way, but it's a PG show.
Okay, so I actually mentioned on there, I believe this is a year they're going to trade Tyson Barrie's contract out. They're going to find a way to do that. So I mentioned that. Look, there's a few different teams to look at, depending, possibility. Could he be traded over to Anaheim if they can pick up someone like John Gibson and he does accept a trade out to Edmonton? We know that most people say that he likely doesn't want to come this way. Who knows what happens? Or maybe they're unloading that contract. He's well worth it. His game rounded out in the playoffs. He played some of his best defense this last year, especially in the playoffs. He can run your power play, possibly even over to Seattle if they can just unload the contract to pick up some more cash flow. So who knows? But I do believe that they are going to bring in a first-string goalie. They will not run with Smith and just Skinner. So I don't know what they're going to do on the Smith front, but I can tell you a first-string goalie I believe is going to be brought in. So we're talking, we're talking right now in between the early fives to maybe $6 million is what Campbell's camp is being talked about. They're looking for. Campbell is still younger enough to be able to press. Could they go after him? We've heard Ville Husso. His playoff didn't go that well. He doesn't have a lot of games. Do you go with Husso and Skinner? You don't have a lot of experience. There's talk about retaining cap space in Florida and Bobrovsky on a trade. Maybe Barrie goes that way. Then there's the circulation with Fleury. I don't think Fleury comes this way, but there is talk about that. I don't know. What are things that maybe you've heard or that you could see the Edmonton Oilers doing in repositioning themselves? Because I actually think they're going to find a way and they're going to sign Evander Kane.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to push for Evander Kane. I know that they've indicated. I think they can make Evander Kane, Jesse Puljujarvi, and Yamamoto work. But I mean, what that's going to look like, it's going to be different. I think if anything, on top of Tyson Barrie, I think Warren Fogle is going to go because they expected Warren Fogle to produce when they signed him to that extended contract to be something like a Yamamoto or a Puljujarvi, right? Yamamoto signed the 1 year, Jesse also the 1 year. There's been rumblings about out of Pittsburgh saying that they're very interested in Tyson Barrie. And that, Edmonton and Pittsburgh have traded before. And there's been a few defenders that have gone that way, especially since Chris Letang is not signed yet. And, they're going to be missing him. And he is their power play specialist out there. Could there be something in the works there? I know you've talked about Letang coming once to Edmonton years ago. And I was wrong. I do got to admit that I didn't know John Gibson's contract. It was 5 years, not 4 years. I clearly know nothing about hockey. There's definitely going to be a lot of movement, not just for Edmonton, but a lot of teams, because there's a lot of guys that are going to be moving.
Absolutely.
And there's going to be some big changes for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, 100%.
And, Darcy Kemper is another UFA. Is his value going to go up if he wins the cup? Are they going to look at bringing him in because he's had that experience and he's played well?
There you go. There's the other goalie that's been talked because they tried for him last year.
Yeah. And so there's definitely interest. The two goalies that I'm going to throw out there to keep an eye out because they're going to be very important is Alex Nedeljkovic out of Detroit because they took him on from what's it called? from Carolina, and he didn't really do well this year in Detroit. So look at Yzerman changing that up, and they still have who's that other goalie that Edmonton was also interested in that came over from the Islanders? It's escaping me. He signed Thomas Greiss. That's who it was. They were interested in Thomas Greiss. So watch for that, as well as watch for the two goalies in Washington with Vanacek and Samsonov, because there was some rumblings there with those two. And I don't know if the Washington Capitals want to return with those two as their goaltenders. So keep an eye on those names.
Interesting.
Because those guys potentially could be moved. The third one that I potentially, and it's a dark horse, is what is Carolina going to do? Are they going to have Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta back because that worked for them? Or are they going to go with Ranta, who played very well for them in the playoffs, and Piotr Kowiecki? How did you pronounce it? I'm butchering his name.
I don't have the names in front of me, so
you guys can let us know. So essentially what it comes down to is there'll be some movements. The other thing that I kind of want to have a little side rant, if I may, because we always have a rant on this show.
Okay, here we go, man.
Why are NHL teams recycling coaches and going to something? Why don't they try something different? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I think Peter DeBoer is a great coach, but don't bring him to Dallas. Like, how is he going to make that team better? Even though now Radulov has signed in the KHL, so he's gone. What do you do? Like, why is it? I mean, I understand Barry Trotz is very lucrative, but why is Bruce Cassidy going to Vegas? Like, yeah, he's a good coach. He's going to do phenomenal there. But why not bring someone up like you saw with Jay Woodcroft in Edmonton, right? Gerard Gallant, he did some wonders in New York. And so I just think like coaches need to you can't recycle coaches. Oh, you're going to go here now. This guy's going to go here. Oh, and Paul Maurice now in what's it called? In Florida. Why would you do that? Andrew Burnett was a perfectly solid and a nominated coach this year, a Jack Adams nominee.
I think they felt that they were outcoached from a management perspective is all. Not that I actually agree with that.
One series, yeah.
Yeah.
And you see what happens? This guy gets outcoached in the second round and gets fired, doesn't even get extended, right? Whereas you look at Toronto, where people were calling for the coach's head, and he's got the faith from management to continue on. Sheldon Keefe, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, if you look at John Cooper, right? So John Cooper's come in. Now you got someone like Woodcroft. There's a lot of those younger guys, but some are recycling the older guys, right?
Yeah. So that's my only thing. I wish they give other coaches or assistant coaches a chance. Now watch what Detroit's going to do, because they don't have a coach right now either. So it'll be interesting what happens. And I wonder if Barry Trotz will end up in Winnipeg. That being said, there was reports that he had bought a house in Nashville and he'd like to be part of upper management. So maybe there's some merit to that. So and he did coach there.
That would definitely be interesting.
That's my rant. Any thoughts on my rant there, Evan?
No. I'm going to let your rant stand as the rant of all rants. I have no rant that I want to go on about your rant. Maybe I could pick on your rant. I'm telling you, like I'm talking about your aunt. So it's better your aunt than something else. Okay, so you know what? You brought up a point. A few weeks back, I wanted to talk about something out of Pittsburgh. You were talking about Letang. You were talking about maybe something like Tyson Barrie. But you got to have money in, money out. So let's talk about some of the stuff, because you know what? The real world tells us that the whole issue here is cap, and there's going to be a lot of movement. So which teams are more friendly and comfortable with dealing with movement? So the Pittsburgh Penguins have a really busy offseason. So Burke and Hextall have a lot of work ahead of them in the Metropolitan Division, because there's some tough teams. Now, a few of the core players, which we all know who they are, that's Evgeny Malkin, for example. We got to talk about guys like Chris Letang. Now, the Russian center, Malkin, has talked about it right after they were done. He wants to retire in Pittsburgh, but they may have other plans. And he's gone on record as saying, listen, I am still a good player, and I believe good players sign good contracts, saying he's not taking the hometown discount to stay there. No. And he says, I hope that we sign a good deal so I can stay here another 3 or 4 seasons. So he's actually saying, I feel I got 3-4 seasons. So if they do a 3-year contract, it's going to be more, maybe a bit less if they do a 4 with him. But you know what? This is their win time. So if they're going to do it, maybe you stretch it, even make it 5, but make it a little bit lower for how it works. But he loves the city. Now, listen to this, though. This is pretty important. I want to take people down. Malkin already has a connection. As much as on ice he doesn't gel as well, he does have a friendship off ice. A lot of people didn't know that. They thought that they didn't like each other because some reports said that with Alexander Ovechkin and Evgeny Kunetsev out of the Washington area, and Dmitry Orlov and Samsonov, and there's another guy, a Belarusian on their team, Alexia or something, Protas. Okay, so I think they have another guy there too. But anyway, listen to this though.
Man, Washington loves their Russians.
They do. They do. You know, of all places, right? You know, Washington D.C. But for Washington, they have who is it? Backstrom, isn't it Backstrom?
Yes. He's out for 6.
So they have money. So there is a good now. I don't know how it works in the next years. I haven't taken the time to the cap. Some of you Washington Capital fans, maybe you can answer some stuff on here. But I'm really glad that one of the things Sid talked about. He says, "Listen, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself." He goes, "But I definitely want to play 3." You know, so he knows he's got 3 years in it. And he even said, he goes, I heard that Gino and Tanger, which is actually Chris Letang, you know, possibly they could get up to 5 years is what he says. I wouldn't be surprised if they felt they could. So I think that they will still try to work off that core because otherwise it's a full rebuild. And those two guys didn't go to start a new rebuild. So, you know, and hey, just one thing I just want to say, and then, you know, it's not a rant or anything I'm kind of on right now, but, so Tripp, do you remember his name? The Hurricane play-by-play guy, is it not Tracy Tripp something is his name. He was the play-by-play guy that stepped down, at the end of the year, just for mental health purposes and stuff. Mm-hmm. But anyway, one of the interesting facts is he talked about on one of his tweets, and he gave credit, and he says, because he felt bad that he was a distraction, he thought, at the end of the season to the Hurricanes, which is totally, Tripp Tracy, I think his name is. But he said that Crosby called him to check in to make sure he was doing okay. I mean, how can you be a better pro then you actually care about people in the world of hockey who have nothing to do with you? I mean, Crosby is the captain of captains. He will go down. I believe that he should have been receiving probably the Messier Award as the leadership award in this league many more times than he ever received it. Yes. So anyway, there's some quick one outs that I just wanted to say, even though that sounded like a 5 out.
That was not the rant of all rants, so I appreciate it, but it's been good. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of movement. Will Crosby play again? My inkling is saying that Letang can end up potentially in Montreal, especially since they're looking to trading Jeff Petrie. They're looking to bring someone in to help with the younger guys like the Romanovs and stuff like that, you know, and they have some other guys there, but, and, you know, the biggest question in Montreal right now is Carey Price. Is he playing or is he not? Like, what's going on there?
You think that Letang would want to go sign in Montreal?
Yes, because Jeff Hughes used to be his agent, and now he's the GM. So they have a good rapport and relationship together. And sometimes you go that way where you connect with that agent, so you know. Yeah. And you're given an opportunity to play, especially since Montreal has money, and they can put a lot of money towards Letang and say, listen, we can offer you this lucrative lifestyle. And I believe he's from the Quebec region. So, I mean, you know, it wouldn't be a stretch for him to wanting to play in his home the way you've seen like Mark Giordano go back to Toronto. I mean, a lot of players going back to play where they love playing. And it'd be interesting to see what happens. I'm not saying it's a done deal. I'm saying look for that possibility. Definitely look at even Seattle throwing some money at someone, as well as who's the other one there? Some big changes in Vancouver. Like what's going to happen with Vancouver? There's been rumblings about JT Miller and him going to Washington Capitals that we just mentioned earlier. what would that look like, right? Especially
Mm.
since Backstrom is out, and the surgery that he's getting could be career ending. Not, like he may not play again, or if
Yeah, it
he
depends
does,
on
it's going to
how
be
it
very
affects him.
tough. Yeah.
Well,
So, and
Miller,
at his age.
yeah, well, Miller's coming off a 99-point season at 29 years old. He's only 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. So if they could land him in some type of a trade, you know, but they're also dealing with Brock Besner. He's a restricted free agent with arbitration rights, and then there's also talk that they'd like to see Gunner maybe trade out Tanner Pearson and Connor Garland as they bring in new guys, just because with all the new regime changes. So interesting enough, and don't forget, Garland was being sought after by Boston Bruins at the trade deadline last year. So I could see, I'm actually putting this probably if I was doing from Hockey Buzz and talking about Eklund, I would call this, I'd give this a 4 out of 5 possibilities. 4 out of 5, 2 guys, thumbs up for possibilities. That's
only one
to
thumb,
Boston.
Evan. You need 2. I hope you know how to count. and there's been some rumblings about Buffalo being very interested in PK Subban. Now I know that Detroit or New Jersey wants to bring him back, but definitely look out for Subban being pursued by a few players, because how can you not want a veteran right-hand defenseman who's coming off his $7.8 million contract, right? Where you could sign him for $3 to $4 million. And we'll see what happens. So, like I said, a busy offseason. We're hoping to bring it all to you guys on our Facebook page.
So, and I've heard that Subban actually wouldn't mind going for even on a good contract for him heading to Vancouver, but I don't think Vancouver's too interested in that deal. So, anyway,
makes you think that Montreal wanted to trade, or Montreal and Edmonton were about to trade Subban for Draisaitl and a prospect. I think they wanted Nurse as well.
Montreal wanted Draisaitl and Nurse and their first round pick.
For PK Subban.
For PK Subban, yes. Oh my, that would have been like, could you imagine? Okay, let's move south of us in Edmonton down to Calgary. We've talked about it several times. There's not a whole lot to cover here. The Calgary Flames have sent a contract offer to Johnny Gaudreau because they do want to keep him as long as they possibly can. There's been ongoing dialogue. Frank Saravelli's been reporting quite a bit on this too, between the two sides. So they are having dialogue, which is telling me something positive for the Calgary fans. And it's really believed that it won't be about money, because Calgary will deal with the money for this 28-year-old winger. But this is really about, is it more, because the issue is not money, but it's going to be about, does he want to play for a competitive team versus does he want to, and it doesn't have to be Calgary, it could be someone else, or does he actually want to go back to his home area? So when we're talking areas like New Jersey or a favorite team like Philadelphia. But Philadelphia is not going to have a lot of cap space unless they make a move. So we can talk about that in a minute too. So I haven't been following much on Tkachuk. Have you heard anything on Tkachuk?
Zero. I think it's been very quiet. I mean, I'm sure there's, rumblings, things happening behind the scenes, but I'm not as dialed in. So if you guys know, you can let us know. But there's not much. I mean, Eric Francis is a pretty solid reporter out of that Calgary area. So he's usually dialed in. And what he reports about Calgary, he knows. So props to him. Follow him on Twitter if you like. But
I really think that they actually signed Gaudreau because this is a freebie, right? They just signed him. They don't lose anything. And then I think that Tkachuk, they're going to find a trade. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think we've had this discussion. I'm the opposite, but we'll see what takes place.
Of course you're the opposite.
Interesting.
It's not a show if we agree all the time, man. Okay, let's move over to Philly because we just talked if Gaudreau wanted to go to Philadelphia. So this is being mentioned. They're looking, and there's a lot of talk out there. So Jamie Basco, he was on with us last season, or at the beginning of season 3.
Yeah.
And so he's been reporting on Twitter, as one of the inside media guys, he's been talking about Van Riemsdyk. Yes. Now, his actual salary is at $5 million. He has a year left coming into his new one, but it's valued at $7 million on the cap. And he is in decline, but he's still giving you 20 to 25 goals. So like this season, I think he had like 24 or 25 goals. But could they free up cap space and then make another bigger move like a Goudreau or another player that's out there on the market?
Oh, very possibly. I mean, there's going to be a lot of demands for right-hand centers. Look
So
at
who?
potentially New York Rangers, who are going to be losing Ryan Strome, because I don't think they're going to sign him with all the guys that they have upcoming. And of course, Ryan Strome is probably going to be wanting, 7 to 8.5 million on the market. Will he get it? I don't know, right? I mean, anything is
Yeah.
possible.
I
But
don't I
Philly,
don't see
Philly has
Philly
some
doing
big
that.
questions.
Do you
Oh, I'm not
see the
saying
Rangers and Philly making a deal on Van Riemsdyk?
no. They would. I'm saying they would trade Van Riemsdyk somewhere else, but then they would sign because Strome is a UFA.
I see. Oh, I mean,
So
he's one of the guys that they could sign potentially.
potentially him,
Okay.
or I could see Kadri being very interested to them because he plays that kind of Philly style hockey, that gritty in your nose. And remember, they just signed Tortorella to a new contract as a coach. That's going
Yeah.
to be a big implementation because will he make that team better? Is he going to push them like he did in
Yeah.
Columbus, like he did with
So
Vancouver?
I actually think Kadri is going after the money. So he's going
Oh,
to
I
go to
agree.
the highest bidder. Good team, bad team doesn't matter. That's where I think he's going.
Montreal, also from that area.
Could you imagine Kadri in Montreal?
Possibly, yeah. If they pay
Oh,
him,
that
they need
would
a
be weird,
center.
man.
You help Nick Suzuki, right?
That's true. It's true. Okay, so just a quick note. I just want to cover one team really quick. Don't want to have a lot that I want to say. Carolina. So Ethan Bear has been given permission to speak to other clubs for his
Yes.
agent. Because now you got to remember he's a restricted free agent.
Yes.
However, he was a healthy scratch during the Canes playoff run, and there has been a lot of rumors that Bear struggled this season and was kind of on the outs with Rob Brindamore,
Okay.
which it's interesting, and again, I'm not going to say anything more than there was a lot of rumors on the move and people were defending Bear. There was questions on his conditioning, things like that. It's
Yes.
interesting because I think Bear is a good player. I think he
Yes.
has lots of those instincts, but Carolina has a specific way they want to play, and you got to know they deal with troubled players because they brought Anthony D'Angelo in, who had a wonderful season.
Tony D'Angelo.
Tony D'Angelo, sorry.
Tony.
And Anthony D'Angelo was drafted actually many years earlier by the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it was a flop. Okay.
Yeah, and they have to re-sign him. Now, the one thing I will say about Carolina, which I don't fault the organization as much or Rob Brindamore, is they have a lot of depth on the back end.
Yeah.
Like when you have Jacob Slavin, Brett Pesci, you had
Oh,
Ian Cole, Tony D'Angelo, like you have some big names back there. It's
yes.
it's hard to crack their top four, let alone their top six. So I can understand why. But I think a younger team that needs a right-handed defenseman. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you said it's going to be hard to crack them, but could he crack the Kraken? Woo!
Good, yeah, yeah. It's very possible.
Actually,
Watch for the Kraken to make a big splash because they have a lot of picks, they have a lot of prospects, and they're going to be looking at potentially bringing in a big fish.
well, and I wonder though. I hate to say tanking. This year's draft not bad. Next year is potential. Well, it's at least franchise players. They could be generational in Mishkov and also in Bedard. And
Yeah,
man, I see them going all out. This year they'll make a push, but they're going to be one of the worst teams again. So I don't think they're going to overdo it this year, and I think they're going to take advantage with more draft. What would you say? Chips, more draft
no,
chips.
100%, hundred
Yeah,
percent. And then one of the things that I do want to mention is that every year, we'll make a prediction when the new season starts about who's getting in, who's not, what the standings are going to look like. Every year, there's that one team that like you're like, oh, they won't make the playoffs, and they do, or vice versa.
yeah,
And last year for me, it was the Islanders. I thought the Islanders could still push and go to the final, and they ended up falling for a number of reasons.
yeah,
Who will that team be? Will it be in the East or in the West? Will it be a Vancouver? Will it be a Columbus that gets in, or a Vancouver
yeah.
that gets like they didn't get in, or vice versa? Where Rangers, they had they had a really good go of it, and maybe Shesterkin struggles a little bit this season. I mean, I can't imagine it, but things happen. Or Boston, will they finally fall off? Will Washington finally not make the
Yeah.
playoffs. Will Pittsburgh have enough gas in the tank to push themselves to a playoff spots?
Wow.
I never want to call
Yeah.
Crosby out, but as you say, he's a leader and he'll make things happen.
Actually, that was interesting when you think about this offseason. Like I see the Canucks. I mean, actually, probably having one of the best chances of getting in the Pacific now for next year. But they're going to be competing against the Los Angeles Kings, though, probably with the Flames and the Oilers. The Flames and the Oilers, I give them already, regardless of what happens, they're both going to be fighting in the top three. There's one other team, and I think that's going to be between basically Vancouver, the Los Angeles Kings, and as we all know, whether you like them or hate them, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. So, hey, let's mention, talking about the Kings, there has been so many rumors, and now we talk where there is smoke, there is usually always fire when there's too much smoke. And there's been a lot of smoke around Alex DeBrincat being traded in his last year for young player, high picks, top prospect type of returns to Chicago. And the team that's always mentioned on an ongoing basis, and they're coming, is the Los Angeles Kings. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, they have the prospects and they have the picks, and they're an up-and-coming team, and they're looking for a top six forward, especially since they were missing Arvidsson this past playoff run, right? I mean, he was injured, and I know that they've been linked to quite a few big players, including Philip Forsberg out of Nashville. So there's definitely merit to that. And again, like a Seattle, they're going to push for getting a big fish because they think that they are ready. And when you have a healthy Doughty and a healthy Arvidsson and the team that showed up against Edmonton and took him to Game 7, I wouldn't be surprised if if Rob Blake pulls the trigger and brings somebody big in. I wouldn't be surprised. And they're going to be competitive, right? So one question I have is, who is your starting goaltender? Is it what's it called? Is it still Quick, who's getting a little bit older, or is it Cal Peterson?
Yeah. And I would think they're going to split that load. And if Peterson's ready, they're going to let him run. But if he's not quite, they might run with Quick for one more year, I think. So, hey, out of Chicago, one of the writers there, Charlie Rumeli, sorry, Charlie, I'm saying your name. I think it's Rumeli Tis. Okay, I don't even know. Just Charlie. He's one of the media guys there. I'd never heard his name before, but I found 3 different articles that talking about, and he was talking about Patrick Kane. Anyway, bottom line, he was asking, wonder if Patrick Kane will win out of Chicago if they trade DeBrincat.
Yes, I think so.
He's 33. He's hinted his potential future with the club could be tied in some of his conversations to his line mate, Alex DeBrincat. Now, it doesn't mean he's going with him, but if that happens, now you're talking Patrick Kane. What could even now think about that this week? We don't have time to talk about this right now, but Patrick Kane, with his contract for his last year here, where could he go? Obviously, Chicago would have to eat some of that cap, but they can maybe get something good back. But he's going to have to go to a team that thinks that they have a chance. Otherwise, they're not trading for Patrick Kane.
I'm going to say, and maybe it's just the child's dream, is going to Buffalo, his hometown team that he grew up watching and loving. Because Buffalo, in a year or two time, they're going to be competitive. They're going to push for the playoffs. A lot of their rookies are now growing into it. They found their system. Don Grinaldi has gotten these guys going, and here we go. You bring in Patrick Kane, you sell jerseys, you get the Buffalo market after so much darkness, over a decade of darkness, as Edmontonians would say, excited, and you push Buffalo in being competitive again. Because when Buffalo is competitive, the league succeeds.
So I have to say, I heard you say, sell jerseys. It sounds like you were a Boston guy. He's going to sell jerseys.
I wear khakis.
So hey, before we wrap up, we got to call this a wrap here in just a minute or two. Give me some thoughts, Winnipeg. Right now, we've heard that Pierre-Luc Dubois has he wants to test the open market in a couple of years, so he only wants to sign his RFA till he gets to that point. We know Blake Wheeler's getting older. They like to unload maybe some of that cap. What do you think's happening there?
There's definitely going to be some big questions there. Wheeler, I mean, he's got a big contract like anyone else, and he hasn't really performed up to that contract. So I know there's some questions. He'd definitely be a good addition somewhere like in a Boston where he'd fit in, but I think again, salary would have to be eaten. They definitely have to make a decision about him and Scheifele and who that leadership team is, because that's the biggest problem there. All the rumblings that came out after Patrick Laine was traded was because between the riff and tension between Laine and Scheifele and Wheeler, and is that a good locker room? And you need that dynamic. And of course, not everyone's going to get along. You and I hate each other all the time. We always disagree, and it makes sense, but we still have to work together. It's part of the charm, right? But I'm kidding. You're wonderful. But the thing is that they have to have some big questions, because you have one of the best goaltenders in the world. You have some solid, D pairings, and you just got to change up your forwards. Again, we talked about, and we had a guest on the show who was tied into Winnipeg, that they should have been one of the best, if not the best team in Canada with the depth and on the game sheet, what they look like. And I and you agreed to that, and we were both wrong because we know nothing about hockey. But Barry Trotz can definitely help that if he gets in there.
Yeah,
I think Kevin Cheveldayoff needs to tweak little things, and maybe that means moving Scheifele or Wheeler. That being said, do not move someone like a Kyle Connor, who has been elite for you, what's his name? It's going to be another
Ehlers.
Yeah, Nikolai Ehlers, another player who's very, very dialed in and can really play for you, And Paul Stastny, he's getting older. Is he going to come back, or are you going to get someone else there? So I think you just got to tweak the forward lines, and I think you can make it happen, but it's hard to say. What about you?
I'm wondering in Winnipeg if they're actually. I think they're going to retool. If they bring Trotz in, they're retooling on the run. They're going to try and work around it. I don't see them moving the Blake Wheeler without costing them a lot. I think they're going to stick with it. So he was just under a point per game. He's still a big guy. He can ride them. But I do see them trading off Dubois. I don't see them sticking around. I know they think they can make something happen, but they have to talk like that. But their future looks good. They got some good young prospects still coming up. So I think they just want a chance to get into the playoffs again. But here's the biggest question there. Hellebuyck, his contract, I'm not sure, you guys can let me know. I thought he only had
6x6, isn't it?
I thought he only had 2 years left. I think he's only got 2 years left. You guys correct me if I'm wrong out there.
That's $6 million, I think, or 6.5, 6 million.
I mean, can you imagine if they lose him? I mean, you cannot lose Connor Hellebuyck. I mean,
no, and he plays 70 games at least, or 65,
2 games,
right?
He's at $6.1 million with 2 left. So, and I know there was some talk about, could Edmonton pick someone like him up and give up some youth? But there's no trading going on within that same division. I think it would be a great move for Edmonton to try to win now. And it could be very beneficial.
Same conference,
they would probably
not division. They're in the other division.
Oh, you know what? I forgot. Yeah, I was thinking Canadian division. That's right too. Yeah, because I was thinking I was thinking the old Smite division. It just shows you how long I've been around.
So then, I mean, that's the question and you guys can answer what you see in the Central, like we talked in the Pacific. Who do you see coming out of the Central next year? Because you've got Colorado, who could win the Cup and still be competitive next year, because you still have Nathan McKinnon, Cale McCarr, Gabriel Landeskog. Like, how do you not, right? Then you've got Minnesota, who really put all their chips in, and will they be competitive? You got Nashville, who barely got in, but they still competitive. Yeah. You got Winnipeg, who barely just was on the outside. Of course, you've got Arizona, and you've got Chicago, who probably won't get into the playoffs. But then you got Dallas.
Probably. You think Arizona or Chicago even has a chance to get in the playoff?
Anything is possible. I don't want to make any bad predictions. Sometimes people go on Yoko runs, but
you're right.
I don't think so. But
you're right. Anything is possible. After 25 years, my vasectomy just may not work, and I may become a father.
Snip, snap. It's true. So really, who do you see emerging out of there that can make a push. And of course, I know you said that St. Louis may regress a little bit, but I don't think so. St. Louis is
Yeah.
another competitive team. And will we see another 5 teams from there, or will we see 4, right? Like it's tough to say. Now, would you go back, quick question on the fly, would you go back to the 1 versus 8 seeding in the playoffs, or do you like the format?
I actually want 1 versus 16, no West and the East.
Okay.
I hate that. I like to go back to the old days. It's never going to happen though. They like their Western and Eastern. But yeah, I think you go 1 versus 8. You take the top teams. It's really easy to know who's playing, and it's fair. And let's face it, then a team like Toronto and Tampa wouldn't have played in the first round. Like that,
100%.
I mean, great first round, but let's face it, we'd like more people watching later into the playoffs, as they go
I think they've
forward,
had an increase in viewerships this playoff season, so it's been a positive, and it's been one of the best playoffs I've ever seen. My bracket is still intact perfectly, albeit what I said on the show was wrong. So, I had Calgary beating the Lightning, but it's been good. And final thoughts: has reffing improved, or is it still perfect?
Oh, it's still perfecto, no mistakes. And I'd like to say to everybody, the bracket that you keep hearing about from Pavel, what Pavel's not telling you, he's gone and made 8 different brackets, and then he just puts up whichever up whichever one suits his fancy.
I'm not.
Well, buddy.
Silly.
Well, buddy, it's been a good show. Good to be on, guys. Like, follow, share us. On your Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, check out ASAP Network. They got some great stuff. You got to follow NBA right now. Big trades going on.
No, they're done.
No.
I mean,
follow the There's some big trades happening, movement around with what's going on.
Irving going potentially to the Lakers. Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. So, but anyway, yes. So it's been another fabulous time. Last thought, bud.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm going to go get some sleep because my son won't let me sleep. And I'm looking forward to talking more hockey. Albeit next week, I could just sit here quietly, silently. Maybe I'll just get a snapshot of myself because you just love talking about prospects. So you know more about that than I do. You're more dialed in.
Well, I'll give you my stuff before the week's up, so you'll have it a couple days in advance. And then you can go do all your research while you're babysitting.
Oh, yes.
But that does not mean sitting on the baby. Well, guys, on behalf of 2 guys, and I guess now 2.5 guys, and Hockey Talk, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice. Side note, we haven't talked contracts yet, negotiations. They're still in play.
Keep your head up, boys.
Stay safe. We love you all.